As you guys just heard, this particular loudspeaker is a poor performer. I'm going to use it to strip the cone out, recenter the voice coil, put a new surround on, and construct a new cone. By the way, when I was playing the loudspeaker, it was just sitting in this open container with just a little bit of foam there to help the acoustics there, the frequency response, that is. Looks like we've got about a 6-inch loudspeaker. So I'll go ahead and sacrifice this loudspeaker. We'll use it to try to recreate a cone, possibly a voice coil as well. No turning back now for sure. I'm going to try to lift this cardboard gasket if I can, salvage it. That'll come in handy. You can see how narrow that is, and it looks like the spider down here is in good shape. Going to continue to go around the perimeter of the loudspeaker and see if I can break this gasket loose. Would love to save that just so I don't have to duplicate it. Looks like numerous layers of cardstock was probably used back in the day to create that. Alright, I'll continue to work that. Let me grab some lacquer thinner and a small brush and see if I can just break this spider loose, undo the solder connections here for the voice coil, and just go ahead and pull this whole assembly out before I mess up the spider itself. You can see I'm just going around the perimeter, just try to saturate that, let it sit in there for a few minutes, keep it wet. Hopefully I can just pull the whole voice coil and spider assembly out. There we have it. You can see the cupped spider and the attached voice coil. Spider looks to be in great shape. Let me see if we can salvage it. Just take note of this. You can see where the cone itself was attached to the voice coil, just above the spider, probably about 2 millimeters or so. I don't want to get the former too wet because it will just fall apart. I'm going to try to clean off just a little more of the cone that's left behind, or some of the glue. The key thing is you don't want to get the lacquer thinner on the voice coil. It will unwind itself. Been there, done that. Notice the leads as well for the voice coil. They don't go back through the speaker cone. They're just laying on top of the spider in this particular design. Actually makes it a little nicer and easier to work with when you have that situation. Just taking a Q-tip and removing some more of the adhesive that was left behind for the spider glue. I already noticed a little trash there around the center pole piece. I'll take some double-sided tape and run it around the perimeter of the magnet and see if we can remove any debris that may be down there. That may have been some of my issue with the voice coil rubbing. Try to hold this up here where you guys can see this. I'm able to put a little bit of the lacquer thinner right here around the edge and let that seep in, and then go back with the razor knife and go underneath. I think I can do that successfully and possibly lift off the cardboard gasket. Not bad. I got the bulk of it. Just a little tweaking here on the cleaning using a Scotch-Brite and a little bit of lacquer thinner. Okay, I'll make one more pass and that's going to be good enough. You don't have to have every bit of that cleaned up. Just want to make sure that the gasket and the surround's going to be able to adhere to the frame itself. The old voice coil measures 3.2 ohms and everything's in great shape. You guys saw that watched the previous video. I like to place a little bit of the Renaissance wax inside the voice coil. So I'm going to do that now. Just use a Q-tip and then wipe it off with the other end. Everything is good and clean. I've wiped down the speaker frame as well with alcohol. And I just want to do one more dry fit. You can see a little bead of glue around the spider itself. Right, let me get the shims in place real quick. Let the glue set up, then I'll remove the shims and then we'll start working on the cone. While I'm waiting on the spider to dry, you can see I've got a cone here. This will be sacrificed. I'm going to use the surround off of this cone. You can see if I can get it down here without messing up the spider. And of course the cone will not work. You can see it's not a match for the voice coil size. But I'm going to go ahead and trim the surround off to fit the speaker basket, and then we'll glue the new cone that we build back to this. So let me go ahead and trim this off in this area. Use this, go ahead and get the measurements I need and do just a probably a 1 or 2 millimeter overlap, not to stiffen the surround. So measuring my surround area, probably not showing up well on camera there, I'm about 4 millimeters. And if I look at this surround, I'm about 5. So I'm going to just trim just a hair off the edge of the surround. Alright, did my best there to trim off about 1 millimeter. And another dry fit, placing the surround down with the gasket around it, just to make sure I'm not compressing the surround itself. And then I'll make a final trim here, just to reduce my overlap, not to stiffen that up so much in that area. Probably 2 to 3 millimeters or so should suffice. You guys may or may not be able to see that, but I've just got a pencil mark there with my overlap. And I placed a little bit of glue on the back side as well. Just hold that in place for a few minutes. But I think it's going to be good. That gives me a channel here for the gasket of about 4 to 5 millimeters without compressing the foam surround. Just another dry fit with the gasket and the surround. So I've decided in this design I'm going to do the cone the way I did in my last rebuild and come up from underneath. And you can see I've just got a flat popsicle stick actually residing on the surround to kind of gauge the height of the cone that I'll need. Again, I'm going to be going underneath, and all I want to do is measure the distance from my voice coil glue point back up to the bottom of the stick. And you guys are looking at this at a different angle, but somewhere around 26 to 27 millimeters would be the height that I need. And we also need to know the outside diameter of the surround glue points, and that would be at this perimeter back to here. Let me just flip the surround over and we'll measure that. I've already measured the diameter of the voice coil itself, and around 20.5 to 21 millimeters. That would be the third measurement that we need. You can see the distance across, 120 millimeters. That's the number we'll use. That will be our large D diameter. And again, if you reference back to the loudspeaker itself, the voice coil diameter at 20.5 to 21. We'll start with 20.5, and I'll show you the reason for that in just a bit. And then we measured the height. That would be the other piece, again, that's critical to doing the calculated measurements for the truncated cone. You're looking at a screen print of a spreadsheet that I've had for reference for some time. A gentleman, Nevin, he was a retired mathematician, I think, that taught up in the Vermont Technical College, put this together and shared it. But it's really simple to use if you have Excel. For those that don't have Excel, I'll share some other online resources that work equally as well. But this lays out the cone dimensions for a flat sheet of paper. And you can see I've keyed in my numbers, and we'll use the top number here, the 120 diameter. That's our large diameter for the cone that attaches back to the surround. We said 20.5 millimeters for the diameter of the voice coil, and the height of 26 millimeters. And you can see the starting number that I'll reference on paper will be the radius, the small r. I'll draw a straight line at 67.7, roughly 68 millimeters across. And then we'll take the angle of 40.9 between these 2 points, R and S. Then draw my connecting line, S, and then we'll cut this thing out. I'll also do a glue margin off to the side of R, about 5 to 6 millimeters or so. So to recap, the first number I'm going to use after plugging in my 3 dimensions will be my small r value at 67.7. Then we said the angle was 40.9. And I'll come over to 40.9, roughly 41. So our angle, again, between these 2 points, well, here and here, I mentioned my gap for gluing. I'll just use 5 millimeters. So this will be the gap that I'll place some adhesive on when we cut the cone and glue these together. We already said the distance S, as you can see, is 56.1 back to the outside edge of the cone. What I like doing using this particular spreadsheet is just take R minus S, so 67.7 minus 56.1, and go back from my center point here to here and just note that, and then we'll connect the circle here. You can see that gives us 11.6 millimeters. We'll draw the big D first. And then our little d. I'll take my X-Acto knife and cut out this area. And of course I've got to cut the circle out here. I could do that with a circle cutter or just use some scissors, which I'll do. So let me trim around here and I'll cut this. And again, I'm going to cut this line, the broken line, cut this line, place some glue in this area, fold the cone up, and we'll do a dry fit. Then I mentioned I'll be cutting my broken line. And there's our cone. Let me just use some all-purpose glue stick for now. You can see that does a pretty good job and almost gets to the perimeter. Maybe 121 might be a better diameter. And you can see I'm putting just a slight amount of weight on there. And what I'll do when I get my permanent cone would be to put a bead of glue on the surround itself and then place this down and let it set up for an hour or so before removing the small amount of weight. And then we have the completed cone at that point with the surround attached. You can see I've got a good fit there to the cone. The reason I like cutting it just a bit smaller, I want to make sure I don't have any large gaps, of course, around the voice coil, but you can just take some sandpaper, roll it up, and do just a little light sanding there if you're off on the measurements. Do some dry fits just to make certain that everything looks good. Then make your permanent cone. Let me grab the material that we're going to use, and I'll share with you what I've used on my last few rebuilds. So this is the cardstock that I've been using. Seems to work pretty well. I've tried different craft papers and assorted material. I'm using a bigger sheet that I can cut to size just in case I run across a larger cone size, but you can see I'm using a 12 by 12. It's a 65-pound cover. And again, it seems to work pretty well. So let me grab a sheet of this out and go ahead and repeat those same measurements that I did previously. I won't bore you guys with that. cut the cone, and then we'll do another dry fit and get it ready for placement on the surround. You can see I just finished up drawing out my template that I'll use to make the truncated cone. Again, same process that we just followed a moment ago. Let me go ahead and cut this out. We'll do another dry fit. Of course, I want to make sure I've got a better bond for my glue points here for the cone, so I'm going to just be using some of the neutral pH adhesive. You can see a little glue on both sides. You'll notice where you place the cone together, it's not perfect. That's why I like placing some weight on it. After I put the bead of glue down, find something that weighs just a few ounces. Of course, I don't have it aligned yet, just for demonstration purposes. Let me get the glue out and apply it around the outside of the surround, get this aligned, and we'll let this set up for a period of time. A good hour has passed. Let me go ahead and remove my small weight that I had on the back of the cone. The reason I like applying the cone to the back side of the surround, you can see the adhesive that slips out. It seems like every time I do it to the front side, I just create a big mess. So this is a lot neater in my mind. But there's our cone. One thing I did too to take note of, about 10 to 15 minutes after applying a little bit of weight to the cone against the surround, just when the glue started getting really tacky, I just took my fingers and went around the glue down point and just made certain I applied pressure and the cone was definitely attached well to the surround. And you can see that's where we started seeing some of the glue show itself. Let's do a dry fit now. See if this thing is actually going to work. Okay, that looks good to me. Maybe just a few places there where my cone was caught on the old glue. Make sure I've got it all the way down in there. The surround is sitting flat. And my distance there between the cone and the voice coil between 1 and 2 millimeters. So that's where our starting point was. So I think we're going to be in good shape. I'm going to go ahead and remove my shims at this point. You guys may be able to see that actually on camera. So we're definitely got some flexing there of the spider, the suspension from the surround and the voice coil moving up and down as it should. Let me go ahead and get some epoxy mixed up and get the cone attached back to the voice coil, and then I'll do the surround last. And then I went back with some sandpaper on both sides and cleaned up the gasket, so it's a little cleaner now. Looks like we'll have a good fit there when we're done. Just taking a closer look here to make sure that I've got a good bead down. Alright, we'll let that cure for about 4 hours. And playing with the new homemade paper cone and surround in place. Folks, thanks for watching and listening. Hope you found the video helpful. Again, my next steps, I'm going to put a watered down bead glue around where the surround and the cone meets, just to seal that. Then make an old-fashioned dust cap out of felt. Place that on. Put some protective cardboard over this and put this back in storage until a need arises where I need a 4-ohm loudspeaker. Thanks again for watching, everyone. Take care.